the roof is about to be blown off. And that means we're going to have a lot of chance to do a lot of experiments, many of which will fail, but a lot of which have the potential to become the infrastructure of what the 21st century will become.
I think the technology is there, or at least will get built pretty quickly. I think it's everything else around which to be honest with you, to someone like me, is still a bit ambiguous.
You know, we're in a mental health epidemic right now because the world is changing faster than we can understand, and no one is really in charge. No one is really in control. And so games offer a space to make sense of things. You know, it's a safe space. It's not just the mechanism of the game itself that it's fun or it's addictive. It's that it represents, unfortunately for many people, the only thing in their life that they have control over.
I want to welcome you to the second season of Couchonomics with Arjun. Join us this season as we go beyond fintech and payments and embark on the journey into the future of financial services, a future which will be shaped by existing and new developments in technology and innovation, including and not limited to the likes of embedded finance, open banking, ESG, various versions of Metaverse, decentralized finance, digital currencies, and other trends. On the couch, we're going to have the most influential and progressive-minded founders, executives, investors, regulators, innovators, and industry commentators from across the MENA region and beyond. Join us as we unravel a multitude of layers of the financial services industry and try to learn how technology will continue to impact the world that we live in. Couchonomics with Arjun is proud to collaborate with some of the most respected and innovative names in the world of payments, fintech, and technology. Ardian is a reliable end-to-end payment solution that provides innovation and flexibility to help businesses achieve their ambition faster by turning payments into a strategic growth driver. Get everything you need with 2U, a Saudi-based super app for delivery, mobility, on-demand services, and a lot more. 2U connects you to everything you need to enrich your daily lives by building an ecosystem across its end consumers, merchants, and reps. Visa is a world leader in digital payments, with a mission to connect the world through the most innovative, convenient, reliable, and secure payments network to enable individuals, businesses, and economies to thrive. Jidea is a leading fintech and payment solution provider founded in Saudi Arabia, expanding rapidly across the region with established operations in UAE and Egypt. Jidea's vision is to empower merchants with the tools to start, manage, and grow their business. M2P pioneers next-gen fintech through innovative offerings across payments, lending, and banking landscapes. Their comprehensive tech stack powers end-to-end banking services, BNPL, customized credit cards, prepaid cards, and more. Welcome to this episode of Couchonomics with Arjun. I guess I'm still getting used to calling it Season 2. But I guess by now most of you know who I am. For those who are tuning in for the first time, I'm your host. My name is Arjun. Today we're actually going to go beyond the world of fintech and payments and DeFi. We actually have a futurist in the house. So let me start with introducing Dr. Noah Raford. Noah, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks,
Right.
Arjun.
And when I read your resume, it is super impressive. You were the brains behind Museum of the Future, which is, I think, the most exquisite building that we have in the UAE, if not in the world. You were involved in the Dubai Future Foundation and a number of sort of futuristic initiatives which sort of Dubai has originated. So welcome to the couch.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Right. It's been hard to get hold of you.
I've been on the road. It's busy, busy times.
But I really appreciate you making it. And then I have to ask you this corny question. Are you comfortable on the couch?
Very comfortable.
All right, great. So Noah, there's a lot we want to cover today, right? Not often do I get an opportunity to get a one-on-one with a futurist, right? Although we did meet, I think it was about 6 months ago over dinner. And there was about a dozen people who swarmed you, so I couldn't get beyond a hello. But just for the crowd, right? Or I guess just for the listeners, Can you, in sort of a few words, explain what do you mean by the word futurist?
It's actually a very good question, especially in this day and age when, if your listeners recall, about 10 years ago, everyone called themselves a sort of social media ninja or something like that. Today, there's a lot of people who try to take the title of futurist, and I think that's fair because the times are changing, and whenever things get unstable, whenever things are unexpected, then it's natural that we as human beings and executives or founders start to think about, well, what does this mean and where is this going? And that's what a futurist does ultimately. The difference is that someone who's a professional futurist has the liberty to do that full time. And that splits into two categories. There are those who sort of think about the big picture, the long term, and they generally tend to write books and do keynote speeches and arguably have influence in that space, thought leaders, but generally don't have the chance to relate that to the decisions that are made today. Mm-hmm. And there's a subset of futurists who are embedded in organizations or working in government who have the ability to actually be involved at the table and have a seat at the table and try to bring those insights about future opportunities, the future challenges, and translate those into opportunities for things that we can do today. And I've been extremely lucky to fall into that latter category, having worked in Dubai in government for the last 12 years, which is itself quite a forward-looking government, forward-looking city. So
that's quite fascinating. So, I'll be honest with you. I have read a few books which have been written by futurists. I've had the opportunity to meet, but I never actually thought about sort of splitting them into two. So then here's a trick question, right? And I don't know if it's a trick question for a futurist, but I think it is, right? So there's a lot which has happened in the last sort of 24 months, right? A number of trends, a number of events have happened, and a lot's been written about it. And I'm not necessarily alluding to just COVID, mm-hmm. right? Let's talk about a few events and trends which might not have been as obvious to a common person like me, but actually will have a substantive impact on how our future looks.
Well, when we look at, it's like that old saying in Silicon Valley, like an overnight success that took 20 years to make.
Right.
That in many ways is the way that these kinds of things, which seem to come out of nowhere and take us by surprise, they've actually been cooking for quite a long time. So the things which are going to have the most impact on our lives that we don't necessarily pay attention to, they're not often that mysterious. They might even be things that you hear about every now and then in the news, but it seems quite abstract or remote. And then only when it reaches this breaking point, putting stresses in the system beyond a certain capability to adapt, and then it changes, do we think, oh my God, everything is different now. But the reality is there's a lot of things cooking behind the scenes. And I think the thing that I would used to say, obviously climate is the biggest one, even though it's still in the news. And those are our friends in the region might have experienced the flooding in Pakistan. In India this summer, there was incredible amounts of deaths. The heat was extraordinary. The wet bulb effect is the combination of heat and humidity, which basically makes you unable to sweat and cool down. It killed many people. And we're starting to experience that a little bit more, and we hear more and more about it. But the reality is I don't think we still have come to grips with the absolute, epoch-changing, life-destroying impact that climate change is going to have on our life every day from now on. We say we do. We think about it. It's certainly a part of our lexicon in the corporate world, in the government world. We say sustainability. We say, okay, let's be efficient, green energy, et cetera. But by and large, in many cases, that's window dressing around the fundamental transformations that climate change will wreak upon our every aspects of our lives. Not maybe next year, not maybe in 3 years or 4 years, with the exception of horrible weather and horrible droughts and crop failures and more diseases and more people dying of heat stroke and more people dying of floods. But in the medium to long term, it's, as the Pope said, we're not just in a era of change, we're in a change of era. And everything that our businesses, countries, mental models, our comfort levels have been based on are going to be fundamentally put to the test. And that's both terrifying and exciting.
Can I ask a question? Just I know you're in a flow,
Sure.
So I don't want to stop you mid-flow. But why? So if the Pope can make a statement like that, and maybe it's easier for the Pope to make a statement like that, but why don't people take this as seriously? Is it because our economic interests aren't aligned? Is it because we're just not informed well enough? Or are we too busy watching television? What's the reason?
Well, the answer is yes. It's all of those things and more. And in fact, it gets back to your first question about, what is a futurist and what do they do? And you could really argue, why would one need a futurist? You're an executive, you're a minister, you're a professor, you're at the top of your game. You have access to information. But the higher you go up in your professional life, in fact, the more stressed and more burdened many of us are. And in fact, the amount of time that we have to think deeply about what these headlines mean is lower. And in fact, if we're quite successful and we're in an organization, we have staff, we have advisors, we have people surrounding us who filter that information, who get to know our preferences, and who generally are going to try to do their job well to serve us. And what we see again and again is our perception of the world and the way the world actually is gradually begins to separate. Mm-hmm. And there are many reasons which scientists call cognitive bias and social bias, which reinforce that. So that even when you start to see these changes which don't make sense to the way you think the world is, it's kind of socially uncomfortable to talk about them. Our business might depend upon things not changing. We might actually be terrified to think through the implications of what it would mean, or we just don't see it. It's not that we see something and then believe it. We believe something first and then we see it. Right? The amount of information that is coming to us is always this incredible flood of contradictory signals, and we make sense of it based on how we think the world works. And a futurist's job is to delicately, diplomatically, test how your understanding of the world, and therefore your decisions that come from your understanding of the world, and therefore your business strategy and your investment choices, actually match up to how the world is changing. Because the world doesn't really care what we think about it. And it's an extremely big place. And our little experience of it that we run around with in our brains is a fraction of 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 the percent of the things that are actually occurring out there. So to answer your question, why don't we really understand how big this change could be is A, it's terrifying. B, it's slow. The frog being boiled example. We generally tend to ignore or misperceive slow changes that happen around us. And it's uncertain. There's no guarantee. It's not like this has happened before. And therefore, it's easy to discount those kinds of signals, to minimize them, or to just ignore them, because the alternative takes time to really think about. And not just intellectual time, but emotional time to process what that means. And very few of us have the luxury to be able to sit down and really interpret what all of these things mean for us, for our business, for our families, for our country, or our city. And that's why historically you would have hired a futurist to kind of outsource that for you. And that's also why historically there's that split in the profession, because to actually change someone's mind or to help them see something that was uncomfortable or perceive a new opportunity that is a bit risky to embrace takes trust and takes diplomacy and sensitivity and time. You have to sit and build and have a relationship with someone. And you don't usually do that as a fly-in consultant or in a 45-minute keynote speech or something. So this profession splits in that way because anyone can talk about, here's the mega trends. We can Google those and figure those out. Every book is saying more or less the same thing about them. But to translate that into the very specific, detailed reality of your business context, your family context, your city and environment is a different set of skills. And so that's a very long-winded way of answering why, when you look at something like the long-run, absolutely catastrophic and transformative potential of climate change, why we haven't really taken that on board is because it's almost too much to take on board. Right? It's almost more than we can actually cope with and adapt to, because we have families to feed, we have schedules to meet, we want to entertain ourselves, and it's bigger than ourselves, ultimately.
I agree. And there's a huge personal responsibility angle to it, which I think, to be honest with you, a lot of people want to walk away with, and they want to see it as somebody else's problem to deal with. At least that's what I see in my day-to-day life. Before I ask you the next question, any other trend you want to highlight which is creeping up on us?
Well, before this week, I would have said the absolutely inspiring and terrifying wave of large language generative AI models.
We're talking about Chat GPT.
Right, chat, and that's why I say before this week, because this week, whenever this episode is aired, Chat GPT broke to the public, and within 5 days, it received 1 million downloads, which it took Netflix 5 months to do, iTunes. It's this extraordinary explosion in people's minds of what this tool is capable of. And this is just, OpenAI's GPT-3 model is just one example of many of these types of models. You can see Midjourney and Stable Diffusion for images and DALL-E 2. But that's the first tangible experience that most people have of AI. And it's rightfully blowing people's minds. Rightfully so.
You have no idea what I got up to, but I'll tell you that later.
Well, probably like all of us, you put in what are our favorite things, or like you put in your daily tasks, and it does a pretty darn good job of reproducing what we have to do in most days.
I guess I'm a bit predictable. I asked them to write a rap song on fintech.
Okay, I wouldn't have predicted that one, but but it was. How was it?
It was quite cool.
All right.
I was sort of blown away, and then so was several thousand other people who actually viewed the post, because I actually put it on LinkedIn. And so obviously there are naysayers, right, who came immediately back and said it's not right, and so on and so forth. And I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily understand the technology behind it.
Right.
I only got exposed to it yesterday.
Yeah.
And again, by the time this show airs, it would have been a few weeks.
Yes.
Right. But I'm now reading up on it, both the pros and cons. But, like any other thing, this will mature. And actually, it has, in my humble opinion, transformative capabilities, right? Occupationally,
absolutely,
education perspective, right? I'm not suggesting people are going to start losing jobs, but,
they will.
Okay, well, you're the futurist. But it definitely has transformative powers sort of deeply rooted into what it's trying to achieve.
Well, and let me give you one example of that, because if you just look at social media, for example, and the way that social media has changed from Twitter to Facebook, and Instagram became all about images, right? So Twitter was about short form text, and then Instagram is all about images, and then you move into TikTok, which is all about video, and you have with it a whole economy and society of different influencers and followers around that. And of course, the Instagram age was all about influencers, and TikTok is all about the company itself, the algorithm. Well, what GPT-3 and Chat GPT, which is the sort of consumer-facing version of that, and GPT-4 is on the horizon, what that is the prelude of is fully generative, fully customized social media feeds. So there are no more influencers. You write questions for this podcast, I compose answers, we have a conversation that goes out to listeners. Maybe there's some dialogue on LinkedIn or on YouTube, comments after that. But for every single individual interest and for every single listener, they will soonish be able to receive customized generative video, audio, and script and music for the things that they are most interested in, without influencers, without real human beings involved, without there being content editors, and I'm sorry guys, producers associated with it. And that is going to fundamentally transform the media landscape in a profound way that will have financial and employment implications, but more importantly will have implications on the nature of public dialogue and debate and how we get our information. That is just the tip of the iceberg. So we will see more changes soon, and this, one of my favorite punchlines has been removed now that this is out in public. But I think it proves the point that we're going to see more and more of this coming in our day-to-day lives, and it's going to fundamentally transform how we think of everything we see.
I totally agree, and I'm going to look forward to actually staying close to this I guess this app or this solution, because I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Right? And call me sad and lonely, but I spent a couple of hours last night asking some of the most mundane questions, getting some fairly reasonable responses, and I think all of this will actually improve. Let me come to a recent publication or an article by Economist where they've basically said the future of 2023 and beyond, right? Unfortunately, at least in my humble opinion, it paints a fairly bleak sort of picture. War in Ukraine, the divided America, flashpoints in Southeast Asia, economic stagnation, cost of living rising, inflation beating GDP. Two questions here, right? which out of this list, and obviously there's more to it, you feel is going to actually have the most sort of profound impact on the future in the foreseeable future? And second part to the question, is there a silver lining to any of this? I'm sure there's some positive news too.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I will twist the question a little bit here. It's to my previous point about the reason we don't generally tend to perceive the large-scale changes in our lives. This is a great example. Here's a laundry list of scary things that are changing, all fact-based. But what does it mean? And I think it's important to have a theory of change around where we are historically to be able to interpret what these data points represent. And so for me, when I face these kinds of annual trend reports, there's around this time of year, there's always several dozen of them from advertising agencies to whatnot. The most important thing is not the trends themselves. Right? You want to step back, or at least I try to step back and say, where are we in history right now? And so as we enter 2023, we are in let's say the end of the opening chapter of the decay and decline of the 20th century.
Okay.
And I mean that in the sort of large-scale historical sense, right? From the Marshall Plan on, the kind of global order has more or less been pretty stable with some disruptive components there. But in terms of the international financial system, there hasn't been radical innovation nor radical disruption. 2008 financial crisis, yes, okay, we have Basel II coming in, but these are all trying to keep the system within a bounds of stability. But it's essentially the same model, right? The same is true ultimately with certain bumps and disruptions, the notion of global supply chains, of economic liberalization, of the social values beneath that people aspire to in terms of the development pipeline. Modernization theory is what some of these guys call this, that you participate in the global economy, you liberalize your financial environment, you export goods, you start to get money in, you gradually improve your education and health, and you build your way up the development ladder. Everybody's happy, everything looks good, ultimately building towards some Fukuyama-esque end of history. That is not happening anymore.
Okay.
And so the fundamental substructure that drove that is decaying, is stressed, is collapsing, and the interaction between let's call it the $300 trillion in outstanding debt, the amount of quantitative easing that we went through QE and QE2, the geopolitical tensions which are building as China rises, and as many of the developing countries developing, which itself is an old phrase, have grappled with the IMF and World Bank promise and didn't quite work out, and European political dissension, America's internal issues, its own economic challenges. All of these things are not just bumps on the road. From a large-scale perspective, they represent the gradual unbundling of the 20th century economic, political, and social promise. And that is going to be driven to the wall by climate and by technological innovation, because there's generations of people who grow up without having tasted the benefits of what the 20th century was promised to them. And the promise used to, even if you were poor or middle income, used to be that go get educated, go work hard, follow the rules, be a good person, however good was defined in your local culture, and it would work out. And particularly in this part of the world, not in the UAE, thank God, but around us in the region, that promise has been unfulfilled for many, many, many young people, particularly many, many, many young men, but also young women as well. Particularly gender roles and the promise and the roles and responsibilities that they're supposed to fulfill, isn't quite working out for a lot of people. And so we have this interesting historical moment where there's quite a large-scale understanding that, I think I got kind of sold a bill of goods here. This isn't what I was promised, This isn't the future I was promised. And at the same time, that's the moment when we're starting to see all of these economic challenges vis-a-vis inflation, all of these environmental challenges vis-a-vis extreme weather, all these political challenges vis-a-vis populism and conflict. Ukraine is just an example. And that raises these real fundamental questions. Really, what are we doing here? What's the point, right? What is next, ultimately? And so I think that is grim, because that's a decadal process. That's has been going on, arguably since 2008, but certainly that this unbundling has been continuing and accelerating, and climate will stress this, and technologies like ChatGPT, which are going to further accelerate the decoupling of productivity from labor, is going to challenge things even further. And there's a lot of young people who just don't buy it anymore. So that's terrifying, but it's also the silver lining, because the silver lining is, as the traditional, bastions of capital, bastions of meaning, bastions of security begin to fray and the cracks expand, therein lies the opportunity for extraordinary innovation, for incredible ways of rethinking every aspect of our life. From the way we extract resources from the ground and burn trees and pollute our atmosphere and have these massive meat farms that are pumping full of antibiotics that contributed to, pandemics and et cetera, to sweatshops, and all of this stuff is up for play. Again, not now, not in a black and white absolute sense, not like we're gonna have a revolution tomorrow. But if we're talking 5-10 years in the next horizon, certainly within our professional lives and our children's professional lives, there's a lot of ground to be played for. And that's extremely exciting, because things in a stable system where you have you've got a very big bank, you've got a very established financial system, you've got a very established way of doing things, who gets credit and who doesn't get credit, how business is done. That is not a very friendly environment to try new things in, right? So the good news is the roof is about to be blown off. And that means we're going to have a lot of chance to do a lot of experiments, many of which will fail, but a lot of which have the potential to become the infrastructure of what the 21st century will become, right? And every generation has its sense of existential crisis. This is certainly not the end of civilization. This is not the end of the world. Although if we don't do things around climate change, our kids' generation might be the final generation in a meaningful sense. But it is going to be pretty exciting. And I think that, it's important for us to really, truly internalize the terror of this transition, because it is terrifying. But once you kind of grieve through that process and you realize, wow, wait.
There is light at the end of the tunnel.
We can really do some interesting things. Yeah. Who's going to stop us, right? And that's exciting.
That's exciting. All right. You mentioned the word interesting, and that's good to know, because as you said, the roof is going to fly off, but that's going to make life interesting. Before we actually get into, and I have a specific question to ask about interesting, I do want to talk a little bit about social platforms, right? Such as Twitter, TikTok, and actually the impact they're having on society today. Personally, and some might call me old-fashioned for that, I actually worry. I have 2 young daughters, and I can actually see the influence these platforms are having on them. Well, they're not on Twitter yet, but definitely, the older one is getting familiar with TikTok, right? But what do you make of, Elon Musk spending $44 billion, some of it his money, other which he raised through third parties, to buy a platform like Twitter and sort of, positioning himself as sort of the guardian of free speech, right? Love to hear your views on it.
Yeah, so it's definitely a controversial subject, because free speech itself is the phrase free speech is somewhat of a dog whistle in American politics as well. It's something which is sort of often used in the political debate between the right and the left, as the right claiming that the left are silencing them, they can't talk about things, woke culture, cancel culture, etc. And the concern that a lot of people have is that Elon's application of that to Twitter is essentially opening the door to more extremism, polarization, anger, hate, vitriol, etc. And you see that potentially through his unbanning of some of the most controversial accounts, including the ex-president. You've seen the evidence around this, a massive spike in the incidents of racial abuse that's going on the platform, and people, and women in particular, people of color, all under the guise of free speech. Now, I think that social media, let's call it capital S, capital M, not just Twitter, but is, for many people, the dominant means through which they experience the world.
Which worries me.
I think that we should be worried about that. There's a lot of evidence around the effect that this has in terms of the polarization of people's opinions, filter bubbles, particularly the way the algorithms work. And in fact, and this relates to some other work that we might talk about next, the filter bubble, the way these algorithms work is it biases towards more extreme views because you get both positive and negative reactions, but you get clicks on that. And then the more clicks a certain point of view or a certain account gets, the more that then feeds into that and the recommendation algorithms recommend more content like that. And you gradually find yourself in this rabbit hole of further and further extreme views until your entire media diet is quite far removed from what we would normally consider to be normal conversation and normal values.
Yeah, or balanced conversation.
Certainly not balanced, because actually the question of conversation, are we actually having conversation on social media? And I think the answer is no. When I first got on Twitter in 2007, I think it was, a lot of my most exciting professional and personal relationships came through Twitter because it was dialogic. You'd meet interesting people, you'd have interesting conversations. It was a sort of space for expressing some humor and some snark, but ultimately about discovering and building ideas. That is certainly no longer the case.
No, and I joined much later, and I'll be honest with you, I enjoyed it for the first couple of years. And then it actually became a hate-spewing platform, and that's what took me off.
Very much so. And, that's not just, I think, our subjective opinion. I mean, that mechanism of polarization and amplification has then indeed been weaponized by, one could say, like less than friendly forces, certainly in terms of alleged Russian election interference in the United States, but certainly in terms of people identifying vulnerable individuals or hot controversial topics, getting into that conversation both directly and through armies of bots, and then biasing the dialogue in one way or the other. And of course, the mainstream media, as anemic though it may be, finds the most exciting headlines to click on, clicks on those, reproduces them as blog posts, reproduces those as digital, and then ultimately it fans itself into this endless cycle of controversy and drama. And that has various effects on us, not least of which is the utter debilitation and destruction of our ability to pay attention to anything. There's a great book I would recommend to everyone called Deep Work by a computer scientist named Cal Newport. And his basic argument, and this applies particularly in a world of automation, is that the only thing that is going to make you professionally competitive in the future, particularly when more and more of our lives can be done by machines, is the ability to concentrate deeply.
Okay.
To think through things deeply and to have the discipline, you could call it, the patience, the grit, the endurance to do hard things, to learn new skills, to consider difficult positions, to work through difficult emotions. And the social media landscape, as much as I'm a fan of TikTok, and I am for very different reasons than Twitter, the social media landscape is by definition an attention economy, which derives its success from stealing your attention. In the good ways, is because it's serving you this endless stream of funny and interesting quotes and videos. But in the bad way, it's constantly triggering your emotional responses so that you get this adrenal spike every 90 seconds, every 30 seconds. And that's the thing that destroys the ability to calmly reflect upon the information we're receiving, what we think about it, how we feel about it. And certainly over long-term periods of use debilitates our ability to actually not just concentrate, but do hard things over a long period of time.
Interesting. I'm going to move to the interesting question now.
Let's do it.
Right. Metaverse. Some of its applications, more interestingly, gaming, right? I heard a recent TED Talk, or I don't know how recent it was, but I heard it recently, where you specifically talked about gaming, and I was fascinated with it. So I want to hear your views on the metaverse, the role gaming is going to actually play going forward.
It's a great question, particularly in light of the social media question.
Sure.
I think one of the underappreciated facts about the current media landscape is that people spend twice as much time watching and playing video games as we do using all other forms of social media combined, right? In terms of hours spent a month. There's over 3.5 billion gamers on the planet, people who game at least once a week. The scale of the gaming industry, video games themselves, right, is twice the size of the global film and music industries combined. Right? And of that, about 75% of that are in-game transactions, or an in-game economy, which we'll get into around the implications for fintech and for digital exchange and virtual assets there. But to the previous point, right, why is that the case? Well, I think there's two reasons. One, games as a medium are infinitely more engaging and exciting than TikTok, Twitter, in many cases, talking to your friends, going to school, going to work. Particularly if you work in a crappy job or you have very, not very interesting friends. Or, let's be honest, have difficult emotional issues or life circumstances that you have to work through. It's great to be able to escape because games are structured in such a way that they're beautiful, they're fun, they're meticulously designed to provide a sense of accomplishment. Every little level, you know what you're doing, every single task, mission, reward. You have the chance to express yourself as a vision or a version of yourself better than yourself. And there's quite an engaging backstory or lore. And that has become an incredible cultural force for many, many young people. In the same way that bands or what football team did you support used to be one of the definitional identity pillars for ourselves in the past, which games you play and the characters you play and how you play them is many people's culture these days. And so when you look at why gaming is so popular, why it's so large, it makes sense. But I think the other reason it's so popular is not just the mechanism itself, is because, as we alluded to earlier, we are undergoing a period of dramatic and terrifying change, where everything seems to be falling apart. It seems to be out of our control. Depression is going through the roof. Suicidal thoughts is going through the roof, particularly during COVID and during isolations. It's scary. We're in a mental health epidemic right now because the world is changing faster than we can understand, and no one is really in charge. No one is really in control. And so games offer a space to make sense of things. It's a safe space. It's not just the mechanism of the game itself that it's fun or it's addictive. It's that it represents, unfortunately for many people, the only thing in their life that they have control over, where they feel safe, that it makes sense. And that's driving this explosive growth of gaming as the dominant entertainment form of the world, dominant media industry of the world. And this is going to keep growing and growing more and more. But that has, again, both scary and exciting implications for what that means for everything, for advertising, for culture, for entertainment, for assets, for investment, for fintech, but also for politics and people's opinions as well.
Talk to me a little bit about and you talked about cults in your TED Talk. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, okay, that was that was intentionally provocative because this is not the first time that humans have gone through a kind of dramatic change of everything. We've had collapse of economies before, we've had collapse of institutions, we've had genocide, we've had large-scale warfare. In many ways, even though it's a very, very scary world, we're still living in the best of all possible worlds, historically speaking, many of us at least. But what we see when we study how people respond to these moments of dramatic change is that they generally tend to look for stability, some sort of sense of meaning or purpose, and some sense of safety. Mm-hmm. And historically, we would get that during stable times from our families or our jobs or our communities or the church. But in these times, those are exactly the institutions which are at least subjectively feel discredited, are unable to meet the needs, they feel outdated. You don't have a job anymore. Your community is rife with drug abuse or domestic abuse. This is the case in many poor environments in the United States. Your family's dysfunctional. You can't get a girlfriend. Yet you see on Instagram all of these beautiful people living these great lives, traveling to Dubai. And so in that moment, we are, all of us, not just even very intelligent people, become quite susceptible to someone coming in with a strong narrative, a compelling point of view, who promises to make the world make sense if you just follow what they say, if you just do A, B, C, and D. And that's usually coupled, at least at the beginning, with a process of what they call, love bombing or affirmation. Like, you're so great, welcome, we love you, you're part of our community now. It makes you feel like part of something. And it makes you feel like, actually, you have a place in this crazy world. And oftentimes that place is explicitly antagonistic. And this is what we see in a lot of populist movements. This is what we saw with QAnon and Donald Trump. This idea that the world is falling apart. It's evil. It's corrupt. But this guy, he's true. He's got true values. And if we just believe in him, then we can fight evil and good will prevail. So it has these evangelical overtones. we're seeing a lot of that now. We're seeing this explosion of conspiracy theories, of cult-like belief, of bizarre behaviors, from eating Tide Pods to injecting yourself with horse tranquilizers and not believing in COVID. All of the madness behind that over the last few years. And that's just the tip of the iceberg because, as I asserted, where we are in this historical process is more and more things are falling apart. And so there's going to be more and more fertile territory for people to be persuaded to believe in these crazy ideas. Now, here's where the games come back in. Again, historically, every generation's cults or every generation's extremist movement or every generation's spiritual or religious movement uses the medium of its day to express those ideas and to recruit followers. It takes the form of the dominant media from originally the church as an organization to the corporation, to social media networks, to, as we just alluded to, video games and the metaverse. This is the dominant medium of the day, and it's only going to grow. And it's also a medium which lends itself perfectly to good versus evil battles, to social identification and clans and groups and tribes. It lends itself perfectly to social organization with regards to tasks and missions, and you get rewards for accomplishing these things. It's almost just like it's the perfect social organization tool at the time that we're the most emotionally vulnerable.
So are we going to see a social reorganization then?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, I again, being slightly provocative in the TED Talk, I think that these two things are coming together into video game cults, large-scale social movements powered by bizarre or extreme beliefs that recruit their followers and organize their activities online, but play out in the real world. And we've started to see the beginning of that. As small examples, there are quite fundamentalist right-wing extremist groups who are organizing their activities and recruiting young people online through Call of Duty tournaments. There are all these games are wrapped in a kind of layer of Discord and YouTube channels and stuff, which further reinforce and draw you into this web of radicalization and of dramatic ideas. And particularly, again, if you're a sort of a vulnerable person, every teenager struggles with their sense of sexuality, their sense of popularity, their sense of self. Are they capable? Can they make it in the world? And this appeals dramatically to those environments. And unfortunately, right now, those mechanisms are being used to push people down a funnel of hate.
So how do we make gaming a cause for good?
So I think that's the $20 million question for the next decade, because first off, I think we have to actually understand that the media of the future, the things that are going to be the most influential are video games and virtual worlds. And I mean that in the largest sense, right?
Sure.
When we say the metaverse, and the metaverse is kind of a catch-all term, but this applies to sort of location-based augmented reality experiences like Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Just imagine Pokemon Go. That is the metaverse, right? To goggles on, headset type of virtual reality experiences, to sitting in front of your console or playing games on your phone, right? This is all us mentally and socially projecting ourselves into a shared virtual space. And so as that becomes dominant in terms of entertainment, in terms of time spent, in terms of influence on culture and opinions, that's going to express itself in every other area of society, in politics, in consumer culture, in financial decisions, and all of these kinds of things. So the question is, how do we make it good, right? Because those very same mechanisms can be utilized to create, tools for hope, ultimately. And I think the answer is still to be defined. But some of the early experiments that I've seen around this, and one of the projects which I'm working on right now, is essentially trying to take as we began at the beginning of this conversation, what is the biggest challenges that face our generation, which ultimately is around climate change, ecological destruction, and the knock-on impacts that has on every area of our life, and then couple that with the sense of spiritual loneliness that many people in the West have as you're away from your family, you're spending long hours in jobs. It's kind of, can we cuss?
You can.
It's kind of bullshit. Most jobs are bullshit. Most bosses are idiots. Most of our activity is kind of a waste. It's not actually in any way coupled to this evolving end of the 20th century and the birth of the 21st century. And that sucks. We feel that. People feel that. So you take these mechanics of games, which are inspiring, engaging, have a lore, a narrative around them, linked to a set of missions and quests and activities, linked to a role and titles and characters, and then you start to lay that on the world around us, and you link those to actual meaningful activities. Like, okay, let's start to really begin to feel what the impact of species loss is on our neighborhood. and you can look around and think, all right, wow, this used to be a place that was, albeit a desert, right, full of rich and complex life. You look at the ocean, you talk to a lot of older Emirati families around here. The amount of fish and diversity in the ocean here is orders of magnitude less than it used to be. Our relationship even to the ocean, our relationship and understanding to the outside world is orders of magnitude weaker and less engaged and rich. And therefore our sense of place in the world is less rich. So long story short, one of the projects I'm working on is essentially building a new spiritual movement in the form of a video game linked to urban reforestation.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, we'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot. This is supposed to be a financial services show.
Oh, right.
Right, yeah. What's the implication to the financial services world?
Yeah.
Right? Beyond DeFi and so on and so forth, with the emergence of the metaverse and gaming?
Great. Okay, fantastic question. Let's just take it from the most obvious.
Right.
The gaming industry itself is around $200 and $230 billion a year in size, a little bit more this year, 75% of which are in-game economies. Mm-hmm. So what is that actually, right? That is people using fiat currency, whatever that might be, credit cards, whatever currency they're using, to buy digital clothes, to buy characters, to buy skins, to buy objects, to buy houses, to buy access to events, right? To buy levels, to buy experiences. Video games are the most successful example of a virtual economy that we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Obviously the market cap of crypto is much higher, but that was by and large speculative assets, right?
Yeah. It used to be 3 trillion, it's down to 800 some billion. So.
Right, exactly.
Right, yeah.
So what is the implication for fintech there, right? Well, if you have a generation of people whose entire preference structure is modeled around participating in these virtual worlds and getting these digital assets, and there are these walled gardens of payment systems in there, the opportunity for financial innovation is extraordinary. Most of these ecosystems, as I said, are walled gardens. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm playing Fortnite, I buy credits in Fortnite, coins in there, that currency, that has zero interoperability or fungibility between other game worlds.
Yeah, we can't take it to Roblox.
Can't take it to Roblox. Yeah. If your kid grows up and gets beyond that, that is a sunk cost. Nothing can happen, right? Yeah. And there are some games where there's a little, like Roblox itself is a kind of a semi-open world in that if you have one Roblox server, you can exchange it with another. But there are to date very few examples, and this is why a lot of people got really excited by NFTs, of the ability to take the value which you generate in that world and translate that into other worlds. Chris Dixon has a great metaphor for this. Like Web 2 is basically built on a kind of rental model. But imagine if you rented your clothes. All of your things you had to give up as soon as you left the house. Ultimately, you had to rent new clothes when you got to the office. It's ridiculous, right? So Web3 and NFTs in particular enable the potential for you to own those digital assets, right? Or at least have trackability on those digital assets. And then that suggests a whole ecosystem of transaction around that in terms of, if you have $180 billion a year, it'll be more this year of digital assets purchasing. How is that accounted for? And how is that exchanged? One of the projects I was trying to get launched before I retired from government, wasn't quite the right time, was a video game foreign exchange, video game currency foreign exchange, regulated exchange, just like any Forex, right? Where you can trade Roblox coins at market value for Fortnite bucks, for whatever that might look like. And that has various implications, both for the player, but also for the companies themselves, because they can mark that as value to the books, right? Right now, it's just revenue, it's just cash flow coming in, but there's no actual value to the coins themselves. So if that becomes an asset on your books, then suddenly the valuation of your company is going to go through the roof. How you then deal with the interoperability and the exchanges of that, how that then relates back to the activities you perform on your day-to-day basis. The best sort of play to earn example that got a lot of headlines last year was Axie Infinity. Exactly. Yeah. Where you would play the game and the success was linked to your amount of actual currency that you could receive. And people were making a lot of money, particularly in the Philippines.
Apparently people are giving up jobs.
And it made sense. The average income in the Philippines was something like $400 a month, and you could make that with like 4 or 5 hours a day playing Axie Infinity if you were decent at it. So there's this whole new economy that's going to arise around that, around the generation of trade, of selling, of valuation of digital assets in these in-game spaces, because that's what most people want. That's what most people are going to want. And I see that, again, as an early indicator with my own kids. They want Skyblocks coins and digital emotes for their characters for their birthday, more than they want physical clothes, more than they want to go to the movies.
So am I correct in saying that in terms of, if you take, I'll leave the abstraction of Web3 away, but let's just talk about the metaverse. It's gaming, it's possibly education, definitely entertainment and fashion.
Absolutely.
Right. Those are going to be the sectors which are actually going to be the, I guess, the progressive ones initially. There's obviously an underlying requirement for financial services to keep pace in terms of either the interoperability or making commerce possible across these things, right?
Even just accounting, dispute resolution. There's a whole legal infrastructure which has to arrive around this.
And that's the thing. And that's the legal infrastructure, the necessary regulation. I think the technology is there, or at least will get built pretty quickly. I think it's everything else around which to be honest with you, to someone like me, is still a bit ambiguous in terms of the definition of that which exists or not. Let's change track a bit, because I'm also conscious of time, right? You recently retired from the government, as you said, right? But you were there for nearly a decade.
12 years.
12 years, right? So talk to me about some of the more, obviously the Museum of the Future is incredible, but putting that aside for a second, talk about some of the wins or the successes which you're very proud of, and
Oh, well, I mean, I think the thing I'm most proud of, is not visible. It's like that's actually the longest job I've ever had in my life. This is 12 years in Dubai. It's the longest time I've ever lived in a single city itself. So
that's me too, by the way. It's
and in many ways, I mean, it's a typical story. You come for a year or two and you stay for 12.
This is my 12th year too.
There you go. And I think that there's something quite remarkable about Dubai government in general, but Emirates Towers in particular. It's this extremely dense, interactive network of relationships, ultimately. And the thing that I'm most proud of, and I think the biggest accomplishment are the friendships that I've made therein and the relationships that I've made. I've been had the real privilege to work with some extraordinary people, and whilst I'm very proud to have. There's a lot of projects I can point to that I was at the beginning of and helped to realize and helped to launch and helped to publicize, from the world's first 3D printed office to the blockchain strategy, introducing and legalizing cryptocurrency in Dubai, and ultimately then the UAE, and leading to all of that, and autonomous transport and drones, and a lot of the more technological things, but also the culture of creating this. Giving life to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed's vision of like trying new things and being radical, and it all happens in that building ultimately. When I drive down Sheikh Zayed Road and I look at the Museum of the Future, which is something that I had the privilege of working on for 8 years. It all started as a little temporary exhibition when I was working in the Prime Minister's office, when His Excellency Mohammed Gargawi said, we want to do some sort of experience about the future of government services. Like, what's the future of education look like? What's the future of healthcare look like? And I said, what do you want it to be like? So, like something like GITEX, but cooler. All right, well, let me come back to you. And we built this little room at the World Government Summit, which is a huge institution now. And it was this sort of film set, this immersive experience of time travel. You'd walk into the future and you get to touch and feel and smell what things could be like if all of these factors come together in the right way. And I think it was the right time and the right place, and we got very lucky, and he wanted another one and another one and another one. His Highness wanted more of them, and then they commissioned the museum, and I got to, help develop the strategy and help develop the all of the activities, and acting executive director and creative director, and build the team and all this stuff. And now, of course, it's so far beyond any individual. No one can claim credit for that thing other than His Highness, because it is a family. It is a beast.
It is, and it's quite impressive. Actually, I've got my daughter signed up for the winter camp there. I have no idea what to expect, but she's quite excited. I'm quite excited.
It's going to be great.
Unfortunately, I can't accompany her. But
she's going to come back raving, I'm sure. The Museum of the Future is the most visible thing that I'm proud of. And as I said, that was a massive team effort. But truthfully, and these are things which stay in your heart more than anything.
So Dr. Noah, what is next then?
Well, so the future is always fundamentally, irreducibly uncertain. And every good thing in my life has come through a process of deliberate experimentation and exploration.
Okay.
And right now I have several really exciting partnerships and projects cooking.
Are you in a position to share any of them, or are they all top secret?
Top secret is probably putting it a little too hard. They're early days. There's a research collaboration with the University of Oxford that is almost finished, that will be looking at this very question. What impact does the metaverse and virtual economies have on public opinion, on consumer preference, and what are the policy responses that we can expect to be effective to that? As one of my friends said, you're the dumbest smart guy I know, Noah. Like, you do all of these big thinkings, you work on all these massive national projects, and you don't have a yacht. Like,
Is that also on the plan, or maybe a yacht?
Someday.
Maybe a yacht on the metaverse.
We'll see. I wouldn't mind an actual boat, but his argument was like, just do something that a lot of people will buy, some simple thing that a lot of people will buy.
Right.
So I've got a small company with two friends that we've invested in, which is designed to solve a very specific pain point that a lot of people like ourselves and your listeners probably experience, kind of people whose jobs depend on their professional networks, and not just your LinkedIn profile, but actual relationships, and remembering who you meet and what you talked about and how you can provide value for that. So that'll come out soon. And a couple other exciting things too, which you might hear about in the next few months.
So we'll just have to keep watching.
Stay in touch.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I will stay in touch. I'm sure my crowd will. I have one last question, right? And this is something which I hope to be able to package at the end of the season. It targets the 8 to sort of 12-year-olds. And I will make a plea to the KHDA to possibly share this with the schools, so that it could be sort of circulated and shared. So I have a question for you, right? We touched on gaming. I think a lot of 8 to 12-year-olds are adopting gaming at a rate which is higher than, or exponentially higher than ever before. But there is a dark side to gaming, right? There is a dark side to gaming. And I think as every parent, you're concerned about it. So in 30 to 60 seconds, right? So what's your advice to these young children in terms of what is it that they need to be conscious and cognizant of, right? In terms of the dark side. Are there any early signs which they should be watching? How can they avoid getting trapped into this vicious cycle, if I may use that term?
Yeah. I think the thing that I would tell kids these days is that the skills that they're developing in these games are actually some of the most important skills in life, particularly when it comes to economics and financial literacy. So my son, for example, is extremely active in Minecraft, runs his own Minecraft server, and has his own currency, which he calls friend coin.
He's made his own currency.
He just made it up. He has a little leaderboard in his Minecraft server where his friends go, and he just says how many people have what coins. And kids in his class want friend coins, so they give him snacks, they give him their seat on the bus, and I was like, that's very clever, but I asked him this question: what's going to stop them from making their own friend coin? And he said, well, deflation. I was like, wait, what do you mean? And he proceeded to explain to me a pretty robust understanding of supply and demand economics around this currency in his fake world, and the ability to issue tokens and all this sorts of stuff. And it's not actually a crypto, it's purely imaginary. And I realized this kid knows more about financial exchange and financial literacy at his age than I did at twice his age.
Yeah. Or if I do it 4 times.
Perhaps many adults do. So if you're playing games where there's a virtual economy, where you value the things that you buy, where there's loot boxes, where there's exchange, learn those skills well, understand them, research them, think about the economy and the value of the exchange, because those are the things that are going to serve you in the rest of the world.
You've just made life for my 12-year-old a lot harder. She's going to get a lecture from me tonight.
Oh no, there you go. But the answer is for your parents too, especially instead of just giving them your credit card where they're buying Skyblocks coins or whatever. Talk to your kids to understand the value of this, because there is that addictive gambling element. There's always a new skin. There's always a new level, right? So understanding the demand for that and the compulsion to buy for that and the marketing component of that, it's another really important skill.
That's interesting. And with that, I'd like to thank Dr. Noah. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
It was a pleasurable chat. So thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
Right.
And
I'll fist bump you because shaking hands is a bit problematic sometimes. Thanks a lot. So that was Dr. Noah Raford. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll say goodbye till the next one. Bye.